Absolutely. I want us to move, the conversation into something, that is also, security related, and that is the very strong accusations being made from the Republic of Benin, where, of course, they're accusing the Nigerian government, headed by President Bola Tinubu, of collaborating with France to destabilize Niger. Can you quickly share your thoughts on that? What are the possibilities that exist here? Are these allegations, strong enough to be looked closely at?
Is it Benin or Niger? Because the one I'm following is Niger that is accusing Nigeria.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So I've listened to it. I've watched it on Twitter.
Niger, I beg your pardon. Niger. I mean.
Yes, I've watched the whole thing. I think it's just a theatrics, because it is just unnecessary distraction now. We have turned the corner on that. ECOWAS imposed sanction and then threatened for military intervention, and all those things are completely off the table now. What is it, Niger, that Nigeria will be, that the president having these enormous security challenges and economic challenge, then will now turn to Niger to become an area of preoccupation? I think the military commander Tchiani in Niger is just throwing theatrics. That's the way I would just look at it. I don't take anything serious in all those accusations saying, it's all over the place in the public. There are no military bases as we know for now. And those are not things that you can do clandestinely as the president. And you will know, you will also bear witness. Anybody that is following the news in Nigeria knows that when these ideas were even muted in form of rumors all over the country, there are opinion voices, strong opinion voices from the north who insisted that the military bases must not be allowed to be sited in Nigeria. I don't think Nigeria is thinking in that direction. Even the army has come out to, we have enormous challenges in Nigeria now that we cannot allow Niger to become a distraction. What is the size of Niger in terms of the economic or maybe...
So the thing is not necessarily a Nigeria-Niger issue. I think that the picture that is being painted here is that since France has seemingly been kicked out of Francophone Africa, and of course, when the coup in Niger happened, if you remember, there were conversations about, Nigeria being encouraged by France to, take charge of that situation, which of course the president didn't at that time. So the allegations really are that Nigeria is being pushed by France, not for Nigeria's interest, but for the interest of France, to, seemingly destabilize the country enough for France to, take advantage.
Yes, at first you describe it as allegation, and let us just keep it as allegation. But what I'm saying is that strategically, what is there for Nigeria to be getting distracted by what France is probably interested in Niger? And for anybody that cares to know, I think France for now has move on a bit. In fact, pivoting to Anglophone Africa now. The next France-African relation summit is going to take place in Nairobi. Ghana is an observer of the Francophone Union. So I think largely the reason why this is coming is because, one, the president of Nigeria presently chairs ECOWAS. The most consequential country in the region is also Nigeria in terms of military power, in terms of sheer economic size, population, and what have you. So it is implied that whatever position Nigeria takes now is seen as the overarching position of ECOWAS. And the recent engagement of Nigeria and France, which a lot of people have also criticized in Nigeria, is probably what is giving oxygen to this kind of insinuation. But for me, from where I sit, I'm looking at it and I'm asking the question, these issues are already off the table. If we want to talk about what is going on in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, I think it's a different ballgame. I think the challenge is that these people have not disconnected from the fact that other people are trying to move on. And then they are playing the gimmicks, because the more they put this gasoline into the fire, the more they realize that nobody can put pressure on them for democratic transition in the country. So I'm very happy about this position of ECOWAS in the recent time, in which they said, if they want to, let us begin to fast track the process. So it's a distraction really for me, because I keep asking the question, what is there in Niger for Nigeria?
Kindly hold on. We have, global affairs analyst Collins Nweke who's joining us. So I think, I want to hear his thoughts, and see if they are different from yours. Mr. Nweke, good morning. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate you.
Very good morning, Osorege. Thank you for having me.
All right. Very strong allegations being made from Niger, again, accusing Nigeria of collaborating with France to destabilize Niger. Now, the reason that, this could be discarded as just an allegation, that they're just throwing tantrums, as anybody would say. But we've also seen in the past, not just in Nigeria, we've seen, covert operations being carried out by the West, destabilizing many countries, from Venezuela to, currently, of course, what's going on in Ukraine, and Russia. There's many, many examples to state. In Syria as well, in Iraq, many. So it's not necessarily a strange concept to hear that a global power doesn't want to get itself involved directly to achieve its goals in one country. So what they do is they set up a neighboring country to help them, do their dirty work. So the allegations from Niger, would you, say that they make some sense, even if there's not necessarily, facts to defend them?
Well, the point here is that, let me actually phrase it as a question. If, under any circumstance, Nigeria was guilty of what is being accused of, would Nigeria have accepted guilt? That is the first question, and I believe that the obvious answer is no. Now, the sort of issues that, Niger has brought to the fore happens everywhere, like you cited a few examples. Now, there are rules to those games, and Nigeria has officially responded to say, sorry, this man just doesn't know what he's talking about. And we as onlookers are meant to accept that explanation by Nigerian government until Niger proves its case, until it brings, evidence to prove, the allegations that is being made. Now, will it be wise for anybody to stand by Nigeria and say, oh, no, they didn't do it? No, sorry, that wouldn't be a wise thing to do, because, of course, it is a normal practice in, covert operations, diplomacy and all of that, to do whatever you can to protect your nation's interests. This is not a matter of morality. And so France have been acting in, ways to suggest that it is now willing and actually ready to pivot a new Africa relations with, the Anglophone Africa, and using Nigeria as a stepping stone to that. Now, it could very well be, of course, that Niger sees what is happening and there is actually nothing really happening, but they are playing into the, kind of power play that they see happening, and, there might be a little bit of paranoia there. So I don't think it is wise to, deny that Nigeria, as onlookers, that Nigeria hasn't done anything wrong, but we can't accuse Nigeria either until there is any evidence to prove the case of Niger.
All right, so now that we don't have a strong case, what do you think the projections are for what is to be expected, in the nearest future? Niger obviously has estranged relationship with Nigeria. What are expectations for how this might be resolved?
Well, the only way it could be resolved is through diplomatic and political means. There is no other way. And let's not forget that if Nigeria wanted to invade Niger, they would have done that long ago, notwithstanding the outcry from left, right, and center. They made initial remarks to the extent, to the effect that, they are going to invade Niger as a consequence of the unconstitutional removal of a democratic government. But of course, they had a rethink. And since then, Nigeria has been acting rather responsibly in the way that, it has gone about this Niger, conflict by bringing it back into ECOWAS and doing everything they can to actually respect their sovereignty, notwithstanding the fact that Nigeria has, and other ECOWAS countries have remained resolute about the fact that, sorry, we are not going to accept unconstitutional removal of a democratically elected government. So far, Nigeria has been doing well. Of course, there were a little bit of faltering here and there in terms of making a threat and not following through to it, but they quickly got their acts together and have been acting in a responsible way. So I imagine that through diplomatic and political channels, they would resolve this matter, and Nigeria should continue to act responsibly towards Niger, like it has continued to do since the imbroglio.
Yeah. I'm going to bring back Mr. Ojuwale, and now speak about if you remember not long ago, Mr. President and, wife, and of course, some weekend, many of the ministers, and governors, everybody went as a big happy family to France to see the French president and, wife. There were many questions asked as to what exactly this new relationship is all about. Were these legitimate concerns that Nigerians had, and what would you say, or is it out of place, rather, to assume that beyond just a friendly, meeting that, Nigeria and France had at that time, that there could have been agreements made between both countries that have not been exposed yet or have not been, detailed yet to the Nigerian people? France definitely is taking its interests very seriously. It's not, seemingly just wanting to partner with Nigeria for the sake of it. It's going to take its own interests very seriously. We all know the hand that it has played in Francophone Africa for decades now. Is it out of place to assume that there might be details in those meetings, which include security agreements that were made in those meetings that Nigerians have not been told yet by the Nigerian government?
Yes, we won't expect everything to be in the public domain, and I won't deny the fact there could be overtures around that such issues. Niger can also be on the table. But Nigeria, save for the challenges that we have, is about one of the most consequential countries in Africa. And when you look at the projections for the future, 10, 20 years, 30 years to come, if things continue to remain on the trajectory of development, this is a market that no country wants to really trivialize in terms of future opportunity. And when you come to multilateralism, irrespective of the position that any country is occupying, the first thing is your national interest. So if the relationship between France and Niger and other Francophone countries are going south, and then it doesn't mean that Nigeria should now take part or take a side, because our own national interest matters to whosoever is on the saddle. So I expect that we can't say because there's a challenge, a friction between Niger, France, then Nigeria should not take a back seat. I think that is what is going on. But I think what the president, the military general in Niger is also insinuating are the overtures that you mentioned now. I'm very, very sure there's no way such issues will not be on the table. But the idea is to quickly pour pour gasoline into the fire, create propagandas here and there, so that even if those ideas exist, which we can assume that they might exist, at least you can quickly begin to rearrange your thoughts, your strategic action and all those things. I think that is what he's trying to do. And in these countries, let me also emphasize that there is a age-long animosity in terms of economic imperialism that these countries are experiencing with France. So they will do everything, like we just don't want to see France hobnobbing with anybody in their neighborhood. Chad has done it. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, all French infrastructure in terms of security that they've put together over time in these countries, they are saying, get them out of this place. Even Senegal, where I live, which is a democracy that has been tested over time, is also saying France should leave. But let me drop a caveat. Irrespective of all those things that we are seeing, France is still alive and kicking in this country, because language is a soft power, about the most potent soft power in diplomacy. As long as these countries, their elite are still culturally tied to France, training their children, their kids in France, in terms of trade and investment, education, France is still kicking and alive in this country. What am I trying to say in this regard? Decoupling from France is not going to be a tea party. And if they've had those frictions, it doesn't mean that we will now allow ourselves, I mean, other countries, particularly the Francophone, the Anglophone countries now, that France is now pivoting to, they should now fold their hands. I said France-African Summit is taking place in Nairobi. That's an Anglophone country. It tells you that France is moving on and then getting his heart right to realize that it appears that this relationship is threatened and is probably going to come to an end very soon. But like a country that should be thinking ahead in terms of strategic engagement, France has started pivoting to critical countries within the continent, Nigeria, Kenya, Angola, South Africa, and these countries. So I think what the military government in Niger is trying to do is just trying to insinuate what might be going on and quickly register their intention to ensure that they create a disruption in case that is about to happen. But nobody, except if there is any significant reason to do that. If you cause any uproar in Niger, Nigeria is going to bear the brunt of the humanitarian fallout, because they rely on Nigeria. The culture is monolithic around that region. So Nigeria has any strategic interest, really, to destabilize Niger for whatever reason, because whatever happens there, Nigeria is going to bear the humanitarian consequences.
Yeah, I mean, the major players in the destabilization of the Middle East, when they are carrying out the orders that have been given to them by the United States and, George Soros and whoever else, they don't really think at that time of, the far-reaching effects that will happen in their regions. And so I'm just pointing these things out because it's not out of place and it's not a strange concept to hear that big brother is telling small brother what to do, and small brother, may not necessarily think about those far-reaching effects. They just need to play, a game. They've signed agreements. They have a bilateral relationship. What is there to think too deeply about? And of course, many people have pointed. Anyway, let's not, bring that up. Olive.
Yeah, I wanted Mr. Collins Nweke to maybe speak to what Mr. Jawadi had just spoken about in terms of France still having that much of an influence in some of these countries, so long as they're still speaking the French language and still raising their children in the French language. Do you agree with this? And how do you think these countries would fare completely now that they've been separated from they've been separated from France? They're still referred to as Francophone Africa, interestingly. So how do you suggest that they would fare? Also, just mentioning that there have been accusations about Nigeria tampering with pipelines, of Niger Republic. So, speak to us about that as well.
Yeah, well, there is a very valid point about, the strength of soft power in diplomacy. Language has quite a lot to do with that. Culture is also, a very powerful instrument. And let's not forget, Olive, that, the educational system of these Francophone African countries are built or modeled after France. And so there are quite a lot that they share in common. And does France still have, powerful influence over these countries? Yes, the influence may be waning, but is this something they can just shake off just like that? No. It's going to take quite a lot of time. France knows that. The Francophone African countries know that. However, in France's best interest, in its national interest, it has now seen a need to rejig its Africa policy. And one of the ways it feels that it has got to achieve that is to pivot a relationship with the Anglophone African countries. Of course, that makes countries like Niger a bit uncomfortable, but that in itself is not even a given, because don't forget that just as France has that powerful influence over the Francophone African countries, the UK has the same influence over the Anglophone African countries. If you also add to the mix the scramble, the second scramble for Africa ongoing at this moment with Russia, even Turkey, and a host of other countries, trying to kind of redraw the geopolitical map, then you see that France actually is up for a very, very big, competition. Now, should African countries just, go with just anybody? No, it depends on what you are bringing to the table. And like I said earlier on, in diplomacy, it is not necessarily morality that plays out. What plays out is your country's national interest. Yes, it could very well be that Nigeria has done what Niger says they have done. If it is in Nigeria's, best interest, as long as they do not, kind of allow the imperialistic tendencies that France has, exhibited over the years towards the the Francophone African countries, well, one could argue that it is fine as long as, it betters Nigeria's domestic policies, So there is absolutely nothing strange in what is happening here. Allegation has been made, Nigeria has denied. Well, if Niger has evidence, let them bring it to the fore. In the meantime, things just continue to happen.
Yeah. What would you, advise President Tinubu at a time like this?
Well, in the first place, he has spoken through his minister. I think he has to stay away from it personally. It's not out of place for him to be asked one question or the other, maybe by foreign journalists and all of that. I think the wise thing is to refer to the statement, the official statement already issued. He should continue to provide the leadership that he has been providing in ECOWAS. He has also been championing a whole lot of international policies that favors Africa. Take, for instance, the fact that, trade tariffs are tilted against Africa. This is, something he's been championing. He should continue to focus on all of that and, allow those, who are designated to do some of these things to continue to do that. Minister of Information has spoken. Minister of Foreign Affairs has his own role to play. So President Tinubu should stay out of it, focus on his role as Nigerian president and the chairman of ECOWAS.
I think we should also pose the same question to Mr. Joali.
Yes, I think the best thing is just like Mr. Nweke mentioned, like I mentioned earlier as well, Nigeria has enormous challenges at hand that we cannot allow this new layer of destruction to be added to it. And two things here, which I think should be the operational framework with which the president is going to respond to this. You ensure that you do not have quarrel with your neighbor. It's very, very important because of the potential consequence in this regard. And we are having this conversation as well because of the fact that for some decade, I think Nigeria foreign policy has gone into limbo. We are not able to exert the kind of influence that we exerted in Liberia, Sierra Leone, maybe because of the internal contradictions in the country. Nigeria is supposed to be an hegemon within the West Africa, at least. And the implication of that is that if we are standing on that pedestal, some of these things that are coming from Niger would not even be coming in the first place. So what is the point? Let us continue to strengthen our foreign policy architecture, dominating the landscape in science, in education, in every area, in technology, and then to be seen as a rising star within the region. As long as you build your foreign policy around those issues, and you are seen as a leader in the corridor. Some of these countries like Niger that are doing all these things and then trying to drag and distract Nigeria, and they will not have a place at all on such issues.
All right, well, Ole Ojewale and, of course, Collins Nweke, thank you both for joining us this morning and for spending a little part of your holiday with us. We wish you a very, very happy or Merry Christmas and, of course, a Happy New Year in advance. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.